Well, again, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, we're talking about, Martin Luther King, and we think of him as, Nobel Peace Prize winner, all the rest of it. I mean, he's a couple of years older than these students when he begins. Some of the people who made key contributions to the movement, many of the people were students. At the time, we're exactly the same age. We're 18 or 19 or 22. And sometimes we think, oh, well, later on in life, I'll make my contribution. But the fact is that if you have that attitude, that later on often never comes. So the challenge is to basically jump in now, wherever you are. Now, I mean, if you're 55 years old and you've never been involved in your community, then being 55 and jumping in is the right point to start. You can't rewrite what's happened before, but you can. I mean, there's a woman I write about, in Soul of a Citizen, who's one of people's favorite characters, who's this woman in San Antonio who, I think in Virginia Amir, I think she dropped out of school in 8th grade, got married, raised her kids, barely got by. Her husband drove a taxi, and an old woman in her neighborhood dies of the cold, and she goes to a community meeting to ask what they're going to do. They ask her what she's going to do. She gets involved, and and she's, I think, in her 50s at that point, by a dozen years later, she's testifying before the United States Congress and Senate. And, when I asked her if she was scared, it was pretty intimidating, by a group of committee of U.S. senators. And she said, well, I was a little nervous. I prayed to God I wouldn't be made a complete fool of myself. But to be honest, I was much more scared talking to my neighbors for the first time. By the time I got to the U.S. Senate, I was used to it. So, here's somebody who jumps in, has a lot of hesitations, barely could open the door to the first House meeting she'd agreed to host. And then a dozen years later, she's talking to a bunch of U.S. senators. So, you just don't know. You jump in the best you can wherever you are.
And then